Welcome to Season 5 of Your Bird Story, a podcast about everyday people and their relationships and interactions with wild birds. I'm your host, Georgia Silvera Seamans. Welcome to Your Bird Story. I am beyond thrilled to be talking to SamSam Graves. I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm SamSam Graves. I'm an artist, illustrator, designer, bird educator, and all-around naturalist, amongst many other things that I'm probably forgetting to mention.
So, folks, I can see what's behind SamSam, and so I'm just going to ask, can you let listeners know where you are right now?
Yes, so right now I'm sitting in my studio. That's at Gowanus Studio Space in Brooklyn, working on a couple of art pieces and stuff like that.
So one of the way you practice art, and actually one of my favorite objects that I have is a copy of your Tiny Tip zine. And I would love for you to tell folks what is the Tiny Tip zine and how it came to be.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like over the pandemic, I really became infatuated with zines. So like zines are a really accessible piece of media. One of the formats with zines, you can just use a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and fold it up and make it into an 8-page book. It's really easy. It's really accessible. And I love to share information that way. So my Tiny Tip zine, it is a tiny tips for birding, for people getting started in the bird world. I created it for my first bird walk in, I think, 2022. So I still consider myself a baby birder. And when I used to go on bird walks and stuff like that, even though the bird walks were at a decent pace, I still found myself missing information or wishing I could just stay there and just watch the birds and just take things slowly. So I kind of put all of those feelings into my tiny tips so that when I was able to teach my bird walk, I wanted to make sure people had information so that when they go off on their own, they can feel comfortable birding, whether it's in a group or by yourself. So with my tiny tips, you know, I gave people examples about if they want to bird, they can bird in a group. They can also bird very solo. And I included something called nature journaling. And so I kind of had a scan of my nature journal in my tiny tips just to show people like this is another thing you can do while you're birding because it really helps activate the mind. I also included birding etiquette and ways to help. So like when I started birding, that's something I notice. If there's a bird that might seem stressed out, when the bird is stressed out, you're stressed out and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I included some helpful tips to let people know how to help the bird out in times of need. And then also ways to volunteer, because sometimes you're like, how do I help? Where do I go? What do I do? So I just gave some information so people can find different outlets to help the birds.
You mentioned bird etiquette. What does that entail?
So bird etiquette entails like making sure you're giving wildlife space, especially in New York, there's such limited space, even with like people. So, you know, making sure people give, you know, these wild animals space so that they can live their lives. One thing I noticed when I started birding is when I learned about Merlin, the birding app, it's free. I didn't know anything about birding etiquette. And I remember I was hanging out in the park with my friends and I started playing like the different bird sounds out loud. And it was interesting because I was getting, I think it was like a northern cardinal that, like the sound that I was playing, and it was responding to that sound. And I was like, wow, this is cool and fascinating. But now that I've, started birding and I've learned about these etiquettes, so that's called playback. And I learned that playback isn't good, or I guess it really depends on the situation. So like, if I didn't know that, there's so many other people who are probably going to be like in my position where you're like, wow, this is cool. And then later on, you're going to find out, oh no, I stressed that bird out thinking I was some type of, enemy that it wanted to fight, like another bird in its territory or something like that. And the reason why I said playback or like playing a bird sound out loud could be bad or good for like research purposes. Maybe if you're with somebody more knowledgeable, playing a song might be okay versus going into that bird's habitat. But like, I am always like, it's better not to do that at all. Don't stress the bird out. They're already going through a lot. And I think I learned this amazing fact how like when birds end up hearing another bird and like the male goes to like defend his territory, if he can't find that bird to like basically fight off, he can lose his ranks. And I was like, oh no,
that's so terrible.
Right? So I'm always telling people so they understand the impact that playback has. But yeah, other things I include about with the etiquette is, letting people know about feeding birds. A lot of people kind of connect with the birds when they feed them. It's a very human thing too. Like when you want to show love to somebody, you're like, here's some food. Sometimes that's not good because like then, you end up making this creature lose that fear for humans, and not all humans are great. Letting people know that, not to feed the animals, keeping distance, making sure staying on trails. I learned the importance of sticking to trails because I also volunteer with NYC Plover Project. And with that project, we monitor this endangered shorebird that nests right on the floor, just right on the sand. And their eggs, they just camouflage so greatly, so great with like the ground and the sand, that the reason why they're like endangered is because people accidentally step on them. But if people were to stay on the trails, it would reduce the likelihood of these ground nesting birds and other creatures to, get hurt. When I was younger, I'd be like, trails, I'm going to go do whatever I want. But now I know. And so putting all these little bits and pieces of information in the zine is letting people have like their aha moment, like, oh, I didn't think about that and stuff like that. So that's one thing I know I put inside the birding etiquette.
It's perfectly pocket-sized.
Yes. I really do love little zines. Like, it's so accessible and you can just share them with everyone. Like,
You mentioned the New York City Plover Project and the eggs of that species being camouflaged with the sand and the importance of staying on a trail. Are there trails on the beach?
I guess it depends on where you go, but like there's not really trails on the beach. So I volunteer on Fort Tilden in the Rockaway Peninsula. Before the plovers come, we put up this thing called a symbolic fence. It's kind of close to where the tide comes in, because that's where the nesting shorebirds raise their families. So that's kind of like where we put the barrier up to separate so that people can have access to the beach, but also leave some space to share the shore with, nesting shorebirds during the summer. So I guess that's a little bit kind of like the trail. But yeah. So if you ever go to like in the Rockaways, like Far Rockaway and Queens during the spring, so starting from like March all the way to September, beachgoers will see those symbolic fences and they'll see signage that says, oh, stay out of the dunes so that it can protect the nesting shorebirds. And one thing I noticed about like with beachgoers or just people in general, I noticed that people think that if they can't see the bird, it's not there.
Mm.
So, a part of the Plover Project, one of our missions is to just educate beachgoers about their existence and let people know that even though you can't see this bird, it could be like right in front of you. They do a great job hiding. And for like reference, the plover is this really small, sandy colored bird that's about the size of a dollar bill. And their babies are even smaller. Their babies are like the size of a quarter. I always tell people that the fascinating thing about these birds is as soon as the baby hatches, once it kind of dries off, it has to feed itself. The parents will, protect it by blocking predators away and like trying to make sure that predators stay away from the babies and provide warmth. Other than that, the babies have to feed themselves. They are so cute. They're running on their two little legs and just like exploring the beach. Imagine being born and you're like, well, I guess I have to find my food. They're independent from the start, which is amazing. But because of that cryptic coloring, it's hard for them. Like, soon as they sense danger, the babies just sit in one place and camouflage into the ground. That's how they protect themselves. And then their parents does this thing called the broken wing display. They're such divas. They're like, oh no, my arm is broken. Please follow me. And then so when they see people or dogs and stuff like that, their goal is to get the predators to follow them away from their babies. But people aren't predators. So oftentimes, they see this bird and they're like, I don't know why this bird is acting funny. And they keep walking, which they accidentally step on the bird, unfortunately. So us Plover Project people just being there and just educating people about this really helps. It makes so much of a difference. So like people now are aware that we have birds that nest right on the ground on the beach, which is so amazing. So I became infatuated with like these birds.
I can tell.
They're so stinking cute. I became so infatuated with the birds, but also because they are so hard to see, a picture doesn't do them justice, right? So I'm also a sculptor. So I started using all of my many art skills to like create visual aids to really let people know and experience it. So I made like a replica actual sized plover eggs so that when I talk to people, I can hand them the eggs or put it in the sand to let them really like see exactly how well these eggs just blend in to like the ground.
What are people's responses when you do that?
They're always so shocked. First of all, they're shocked soon as I pull out an egg. They're like, what? An egg? Whoa, is this real? And I'm like, no, it's not real because it would be so illegal for me to have it if it was.
And poor chick to be.
Right? So I'm like, no, it's fake. And like, they're always fascinated by the eggs and then become even more fascinated by how small they are and just how well they blend in to the sand. Literally, I'm so happy I've never dropped my egg on the sand because then it's gone. That's gone. I would never find that.
Do you think the plovers are your favorite type of bird now that you volunteered so much for this project?
100%. Listen, if I can find a residency to go where they are during the winter, I will be there. I don't have any children. And I feel like because I watch them soon as they, are here and then raise their families and then watch the babies grow up, I feel like that's my perception of what people feel like when their children go off to college. I'm like, my babies, come back. Please write me. Be safe. I love them so much. It is so magical being able to monitor a creature and like just watch them grow up. But it's not even just that. While you're watching them grow up, you're also noticing everything else around you, which is so cool. like I said, I still consider myself a beginner birder because I started birding during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just never noticed any of these things. I did not know New York City had whales. I didn't know we had dolphins. I didn't know we had all these birds. Like, I love going to the beach and I can't understand how come I've never noticed an oyster catcher.
Mm.
They're pretty big. I understand not
Yes.
noticing a plover. They're small and cryptic, but an oyster catcher, they're huge and they're loud and they sound like giant squeaky toys. Like, how did I not notice this? You know, volunteering for this, I've got to see my home in a different perspective. And, you know, I got to meet so many different people as well. You're talking to people, you're discovering how like the landscape has changed and all this stuff. You're really creating all these conversations. I feel like it's really great because oftentimes we have questions and I feel like we kind of make up these answers and we're like, yep. But like being out there, you are an outlet to help people, you know, to help answer questions and like brainstorm together and really create community. I think I've been with the project for like maybe 4 years now, which is crazy how it doesn't feel like time has gone that fast.
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like a passion project, the way you're talking about it, and the body language that I'm seeing through the screen.
100%. Oh my God.
Do you do other volunteer work around birds or nature in the city?
Yes. I I volunteer a lot. As for like birds, so my whole start with birding was when I started noticing like dead birds, unfortunately. So a lot of my birds on my life list are dead ones. So the first time I'm seeing it, which is so unfortunate, but that's why I keep birding so I can see them alive.
Yeah.
Because of those sad interactions, I wanted to make sure and do something about it instead of just being sad. So I started volunteering with Project Safe Flight. So Project Safe Flight is a volunteer program that happens in the spring and in the fall. And it's with NYC Bird Alliance, formerly known as NYC Audubon.
Love the new name.
Love the new name. It's so cute. The purpose of that project is to go to buildings where there are high rates of birds slamming into like the glass. There's a whole bunch of volunteers and we have different buildings that we monitor. And our job is to look for dead and injured birds. The dead ones we collect and make sure and have that research. And injured ones we take to the Wild Bird Fund so that they can have a second chance at life. And that really impacted my life a lot because it's one thing when you hear about, oh, there's 1 billion birds that die every year. And you're like, where? And it's so hard to believe. You're like, okay, 1 or 2 birds are dying, but 1 billion? You're like, are you guys exaggerating? Working on the project and then learning about the reasons why birds are like in the city in the first place due to light pollution. And then you learn about the reason why they're crashing into buildings is because they're not able to like see that it's clear glass or the glass is reflective. So they think it's a tree. You know, these birds are going really fast. So they just slam right into it. So when you learn about that, you're like, oh, we actually go out way before the cleaning people do. So we're out before even the sun comes up. Like I'm still seeing the stars, which is kind of cool when we go out to monitor our buildings. And the reason why we do that is because the reason why people don't see the amount of birds that are hitting these buildings is because these buildings have maintenance people that clean up the birds. So you'll never know it exists. Wow. But guess what? If you come there before the maintenance people, you'll just see the streets littered with little bodies.
That is awful.
And the other thing is, especially during the fall migration is the worst. I think it's because since the sun goes down earlier, there's just light pollution. That's my theory.
There's a longer period of light pollution in the fall.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like in the springtime, it does have a lot of birds, but in the fall is 100 times worse. And especially like with the fall, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between a bird on the floor and a leaf. Because a lot of these like warblers that are hitting into the building are little yellow birds, and that's kind of when the leaves are falling. When I go places, I always have to double check. I'm like, is that a leaf or is that a bird? And because of this project, I've made sure that I'm always prepared to rescue a bird by making sure I have a brown bag with me, like a paper bag, and like a paper clip, and maybe some gloves and like tissue to put in the bag. So if there's a bird in need of help, I can just rescue it immediately so that it doesn't get stepped on or anything like that. And then I take them to the Wild Bird Fund, because even though the bird might seem like it's energetic, because like sometimes when they're in the little bag, they're fighting. They're like, get me out. You're like a giant monster to them. Of course, they're going to keep fighting for it, even if something's wrong with them. So I always bring them into the Wild Bird Fund because they might have internal bleeding, something happening inside of them that we can't see. But at the Wild Bird Fund, they have people, they're more equipped to find out about that so they can give these birds something to reduce the swelling so that, they can go on. So, yeah, that project has impacted my life. So that's one of the projects.
Sam, this sounds like its own zine.
Oh, no, I'm working on that. I am working on that because of Project Safe Flight, I meet people who are like, oh no, sad bird. And I'm like, yes, this is very sad. And here's how you can help. But I definitely want to create a zine so I can let people know more ways to help and like ways to volunteer. Cause like we need volunteers as well. Like we have a network of volunteers, but I feel like it's still not enough. Cause like some birds are like injured in the Bronx or in Queens. And it's like, sometimes we don't have volunteers out there, which suck. Basically, I'm trying to get everyone on board. First of all, you see a bird that's injured, let's all help. But what's even better is to prevent it from even happening. So if I can educate people on ways to prevent this from happening, like telling people to help pass this law so that businesses can turn off their lights at night, that will greatly help out, like reduce the light pollution. So letting people know that exists and letting people know to close their windows and stuff so they can also help reduce the light. And then putting these like little stickers on their windows, on the outside of their windows, so that birds can see this is something here so they don't slam into it. I do have to make a zine about it. It is coming. It is coming.
I want the first edition.
You shall have it.
So sort of in addition to being an artist and to devoting your time to helping the birds of New York City, both birds that live here year round and birds that migrate through, you're also an incredibly collaborative person. You like to partner with others. And I really appreciate that about you. And I want to know, have you always been this way? Is this something that's like a childhood kind of way, or did it develop as an adult?
I feel like it developed as an adult because I feel like I've always kind of worked on my own projects. But I think because I'm a beginner birder, I don't have all the answers, right? And time is ticking. I can't wait to learn everything in order for me to have all the answers, right? So it would make sense to work with somebody else who does. And I feel like the most important thing is we're all fighting for the same thing. So why reinvent the wheel, right? True. If we're all trying to save the birds, you already created something. Can I use it? And you can use whatever I created. And, this exchange, I don't know, it just makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like I definitely developed that because I work with different organizations. And like some organizations are like, no, it's all about the brand. And I'm like, it shouldn't be about the brand. It should be about the purpose. That's the important part. Like I said, we're all fighting for the same cause. Let's work together. And also, it's just fun. Like, I feel like ever since I became a part of the birding community, I've made so many friends. I've learned so many things, and I'm still learning things. Listen, I have a backlog of zines I need to make because it's amazing. And like, it's just so much fun. Like, just coming together and creating community and just like, and you know, like I said, the time is ticking. One thing that when I started learning about birds, you know, I'm like happy. I'm like, wow, I just learned this new bird. And then every time I did research on it, it'd be like critically endangered, going extinct. And I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? I just found out you existed and you're about to go away. And that was like so heartbreaking. So it's just like, all right, no, all right, let's rally the troops. Come on, let's go. Let's just all work together. And it's so much fun. Like, everyone has different things to offer, and I love it. Teach me everything. Teach me.
I want to close by circling back to something you mentioned when you were talking about tiny tips, which is the concept of nature journaling. I know that you're a nature journaler. Could you tell us what that is, and do you do it every day? What's your nature journaling practice like?
So, nature journaling is super amazing. It is the practice of, I would say it's the practice of slowing down, right? And you are sitting down. I'm also rephrasing it in a way because it doesn't even have to be in nature, right? You can literally be home and sit with your groceries and draw it. So with nature journaling, you're essentially paying attention to nature. I don't even know how I came across it, but there's this amazing guy named John Laws, and he made this book. It's How to Nature Journal, something like that. And his practice, he talks about how to break it down, how to connect to nature, and yes, how to teach nature journaling. But there's another one. I think it's also like how to draw nature journaling and stuff like that. All of his books are absolutely amazing. The principles, like there's 3 prompts that I think are the best. So the 3 prompts are that you ask yourself when you are journaling, just journaling, not even drawing, is I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of. Those 3 questions, I feel they have changed my life, because when I'm outside, or if I have my groceries and I have like a fruit or anything, or I look at a bug, I ask those questions. And then as I ask those questions, I'm like drawing the creature and I'm asking my questions. What do I notice about this creature? And what does this remind me of? And that, I feel like that's also like a really keystone question, because it helps you connect that new thing to something you already know. So it helps you remember it. And then I wonder, you write down all the things that you wonder about, you know, that thing or whatever you're looking at. It makes you just sit with that for longer and pay attention. And just drawing itself, being able to draw, and you don't have to be an artist, you just draw. It does not have to be perfect. As long as you keep going, it's about the shape, it's about the vibes. You're going to get so much benefit from it, right? Like, yes, there's nature journaling about drawing. I include pictures because sometimes being in nature is overstimulating. Like, always tell people, you've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Jack the Skeleton, when he discovers Christmas Town, he's like, what's this? What's that? That's how I feel every time I go outside. I'm like, oh, what's this? So my brain is everywhere. But when I'm able to have like my little notebook and draw, it kind of slows down. And I pause for a second and I pay attention to those little details. Versus if I took a picture, it would just be like, boop, and that's it. But drawing it really slows you down. And I feel like that's what we need if we can afford it, is to slow down for a hot second and just pay attention. And then you start seeing the little things. And when you start seeing the little things, everything starts becoming a little bit more amazing. Like, so like during the winter time, so I haven't been nature journaling every day because I've been crazy busy. But like when things start slowing down, like during the winter time, I don't like going outside during the winter time. But to get my bird fix, I like watch the bird cams, like live bird cams, and I love it. So I remember last winter I discovered this bird cam. I think the person's called Alan Bird Cam, and he has this bird cam feeder in Pretoria, South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I became obsessed with that bird feeder. I would watch it every day. When I sketch, I like to do these things called gesture drawings, which is like a really fast sketch of like what's happening. So the goal of a gesture drawing is essentially trying to get the vibes, the movement. It's not supposed to be perfect. You're just getting the essence of that thing. And oh my God, I fell in love with this bird. It's so cute. It's called a mousebird. And they're so cute. They're like this gray little bird that kind of looks like a cardinal. Like they have like the crest of the cardinal, but then they have this ridiculously long tail that they don't know what to do with it. So like they're all at the bird feeder and it'll be like 10 of them surrounding one banana and like their family members are stepping on their tails and stuff. And they're like, whatever. And I found so much joy sketching it. But it's funny because like I was looking at this every day. I started getting so familiar with those birds at the feeders that it almost felt like I saw them in real life. I'm like, I already saw those birds. Like I was so happy seeing it every time. It's funny because like whenever I would be on YouTube or like my partner, whenever he would look at like a YouTube video about bookbinding, I would hear birds and I'm like, is this person in South Africa? And he's like, how did you know? And it's because I've heard the birds so often. I'm like, I know that sound.
You could be like one of those people who I think there are a couple of articles during the lockdown where people were really focused on bird sounds in TV shows and movies.
Oh my God.
Pointing out the inaccuracies.
I recently started doing, I'm not great with bird sounds yet. Sometimes you're like, that's not the right sound. Or you're like, wait a minute, that bird doesn't live there. I definitely do that now. It's so funny. It all started kind of with nature journaling. You're paying attention. You're paying attention. You're documenting. And also, these journals are so important as well, because like you're documenting these findings and maybe if you upload your findings and stuff, it can really help for community science. You might have discovered something and didn't even notice. You know what I mean? There's so much to this world that we haven't discovered. So it's like, get out there, explore, pay attention, record it, share your findings with others. So now I'm getting more into iNaturalist and I'm telling more people about it. Because if more people contribute to community science, we can have data on like finding out what areas need help versus like discovering what changes and stuff and like really being able to just help out and make things better. So nature journaling is just a fun way to do it. It's funny. I have like one of my first nature journals that I did.
It's called Lost in Prospect Park.
Yeah, because I go to Prospect Park a lot, but I never really paid attention. So this is another zine. It's not the one page zine where you fold and get 8 pages. It's a zine that you kind of fold in half and then you put a couple of sheets in so you have like a booklet. So I made that. And the reason why I started the zine is because one day I went to Prospect Park and I noticed something that looked like an apricot. And I was like, is this a real apricot? Why? Is it what? So I started drawing it and I took pictures and like, connecting the dots. And then later on, I found out, oh, it is. That's cool. What? Why do we have this here? And I just went on a tangent of trying to find other things.
Yeah. Did you ever find out why there's that apricot tree in Prospect Park?
Find out why. I'd never found out why. I just know that it exists there. But
I think some of the big lessons for me from this conversation start with the letter P. So paying attention. and partnering to achieve purpose.
Yes,
right?
100%.
So find your purpose, find like-minded people, and support each other to fulfill that.
100%.
Well, SamSam, I am so happy that you said yes to this conversation. It has been a pleasure to talk to you about all of the things we talked about.
Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to have these partnerships and just share the love.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Bird Story. Tune in on the second Thursday of next month for the next episode. In the meantime, explore our archives, like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your Bird Story is edited and produced by Pod to the People. Your Bird Story is an initiative of Local Nature Lab.